Well, here we are live, everybody. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the host of the Quiet Warrior Show. I am the Quiet Warrior, and I'm excited today to have a special guest on my show. Now, listen, for those of you who will be watching this replay later, we're live streaming. I want to tell you that it's amazing, the power of live streaming. We're literally interrupting the airwaves on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And so, hello, everybody, if we caught you. This show will appear later as an international broadcast on the Quiet Warrior podcast. You can find that at any of your favorite podcast channels. And we'll also produce it as a premiere YouTube video. So everybody sit back and enjoy. And I'd like to introduce you to my rock star, well, the chef, Jason J. McBride. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Now, listen, I'm going to be goofy today. I told you what I was doing, but before we get you going here, everybody, you can't see it, but if you come back, watch the broadcast, I'm wearing my chef's home chef's outfit here. And then also I didn't shave because I figured all the chefs are in the kitchen I see in the restaurants. They don't shave for about a year, so I'm showing up authentic today. I also want to steal the thunder and just tell you, Jason, before I introduce you, that I play around on social media, and it's an honor to have you on the show because everybody, if you don't know, I kind of branded the name Chef Tommaso's Michelin Star Home Kitchen, and I actually have a home kitchen. I've decked it out, and well, I do amateur cooking. I post pictures on Instagram, and it was a dream to have a world-class chef and a teacher on because I'm a teacher, and this guy we're going to talk to, gosh, he showed up, and I'm pinching myself. So, hey, Chef Jason J. McBride, listen, tell us one thing about yourself that you think nobody knows.
Geez, I don't know. I was, I think probably that I was probably the youngest person to get my journeyman baking certificate when I was 16.
Wow.
So that's probably one thing that a lot of people don't know. That's I started the program when I was 16. I think I finished it when I was 17-ish, almost 18. But that's something that people go, oh, okay, well, you have a background in this and that. But most people don't know that I actually went in and did that when I was 16.
That is amazing. Well, we'll get into your backstory and the whole journey. I mean, one of the things I do is watch shows, and baking is very hard, and it's an art in itself. So great to know that about you. Everybody, I'm going to build Jason up here. If you're watching, you'll see me reading a piece of paper. There's a lot to him. This man has 35 years of industry experience, obviously in the hospitality industry. They call him a powerhouse. Canada's top restaurant brands. He's worked with many of them. I love the fact that, Jason, you're an influencer on social media. Some of us want to have 1,000 followers. Jason has 40,000. He's a hospitality training expert, keynote speaker, consultant, ambassador for the industry. What I also love, Jason, is your authenticity. Everybody, he's owned and operated successful restaurants, and we know how hard it is to be successful. He's executive chef for private institutions, corporate brands, president of 21 store restaurant franchise operation, goes on and on and on. And, he's opened, he's trained and opened more than 30 restaurants across our great country, Canada. The part of Jason's story I'm going to dig into is really the roots of where this all started, everyone. But I love the fact that he's passionate about cooking, but he's a teacher, and he's turned that into doing a couple cool things. He is the co-founder and CEO of Real Hospitality Network, and that's a global network he'll tell us about. And also he hosts Real Hospitality Live TV on LinkedIn and YouTube. You want to check that out. I checked out the website, Jason, and there's some pretty neat things you're doing there. So now that I've probably humbled you a little bit, I think I told you before you come on the show, listen, check the ego at the door. And it's like a cake. If I'm baking a cake, there's always that one ingredient we want to know about that the chef says it's a secret. Well, I'm not going to let you on the hook. I got my wooden spoon here like my mama did. I'd wrap you on the hand if you don't get us into your backstory. Take me back even to the day you're born, whatever you want, how this all started, the ups and downs to get to where you are now. And then we'll dig into sort of some of your expertise.
Sure. My parents were very, very young when they had me. So they didn't stay together very long. And I ended up being raised for quite quite a bit of my early childhood by my very young mom and my grandparents. And my grandfather was the chief of police in our city, so it was strict and proper and speak your mind. And my grandfather was right off the boat from Scotland, so he has that very sharp humor. Yeah. So and then my mom married when I was about 8, a fellow who he and I never ever saw eye to eye, and he was not a nice fellow, certainly not a nice fellow to my mom. And by the time I was 13, I left home. And that began staying either at an aunt's house or at a friend's house, et cetera, et cetera. And by the time I was 15, I left school. And then begat the, how do you figure out life from here? So hence my comment about going in and becoming a baker. So I had the great opportunity to work with Hans Myers, Chef Hans Myers, who's a world-class chef and a wonderful man who at the time I hated his guts because I was a strong-headed little bastard, and I always joke that he tried to kill me once when I told him off, and at 16, that's a true story. He'll tell it too. And to this day, I consider him a friend and kind of really the reason why I got onto a path with food and restaurants and why I have such a respect for training and all of that. So that's kind of the gist of that. What got me onto this path anyway.
Well, let me let you catch your breath there. Thank you for sharing that. And everybody, this is a teaching moment. You see Chef Jason here as somebody who's a leader in the world in this field. And we always say that a lot of leaders don't show vulnerability, which is really revealing publicly their true backstory. You know, we've been raised to say you don't talk about it. It's a weakness. It's actually a strength. And dude, when you said what you said, it makes you real. That's the best part so far of the show. I want to kind of riff on that a little bit. So everybody, what you heard, Jason says he grew up, parents split up when he was young. Basically another dad came in his life. There was some disconnection there, and left home at 13. Strong-headed little bastard. I wrote that down on my paper.
Oh yeah.
And so I want to just tell you that many people who know me and the book I've written, The Way of the Quiet Warrior, my life didn't start out well. I won't get into the backstory because you know it. But here's the thing. I learned that people don't follow their passion. There's a good TED Talk on this, and I'll give it back to you in a minute. They don't follow their passion for a couple of reasons. One, they're afraid of it. Maybe it doesn't pay the bills. But they also say that passion tends to come from the first 10 years or so of life. Now, I want to tell you that publicly, Jason, that when I was younger, my home was fairly traumatic due to a military-style dad and a drinker. And I had two great influencers. My mom was a chef, not a chef, but she cooked Indian food she's from Fiji, and my grandparents from India. And my aunt, who is my dad's brother's wife, was Chinese. So I grew up watching them cook. And then when the home fell apart, we actually started hanging out at my doctor's house because he had 3 daughters and I have 2 brothers. And I was in the kitchen. I just remember I was about 9 or 10 watching these girls, and all they did was bake cookies. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm either going to get fatter or I'm going to learn something. And it wasn't until later in life that I discovered that I've watched almost every cooking show you can imagine. I've decked out my kitchen. I've gone to culinary training a little bit, but it's actually my passion. And I started weaving it into my CEO work when I was running a company, talking about cooking tied to strategy. And when I'm in the kitchen, I'll finish with this. I hold a glass of wine. I'm cooking. I'm laughing. I'm in my happy place. And so they say if you can infuse what you love, what your passion is, into your happy place, you can live a fulfilled life. So I honor you because I think you can teach us a lot of things. Many people don't cook, and we can bring that into our lives. So let's get back into your story. There you were, the strong-headed little bee and the baking thing. Take us from there. Where did it go from there? I mean, man, you were like 15, 16.
I did my apprentice program through the baking, and then I ended up working in restaurants. After I finished my program, I did very little baking. Actually, I had been offered to work at the bakery where I finished my my apprenticeship, and I had decided that I didn't want to stay in either that profession or in that bakery. And there's a reason why. The fellow who I worked with night after night, putting my hours in, had been there for 20 plus years. And I've said this before, but the poor fellow, he looked like the great unwashed. He hated his life. He hated his family. He hated work. He hated everything. Well, wow. And he was not shy about telling me how much they paid him and all of that. And this guy just came in and did the job and went home and hated the world and came back. And I thought, wow, what a miserable fellow. And then when I finished my hours, the company offered me, they were paying him $7 an hour and they offered me $8. And I thought, God, how is it that you can justify giving me $1 more an hour than this guy who literally has given his life to working for this place and his soul, quite obviously. I can't accept it. And I could never go in and face that guy again and say, hey, by the way, they offered me $1 an hour more than they offered you. And I walked away from it. So I went and worked in various restaurants in my community and then across the country. I left my home province of New Brunswick when I was 18, jumped on a train with my good friend and went to Toronto and then continued on from there. But it was that was kind of the first almost social justice moment for me where I was just like, no. I in no good conscience can continue this path with, in this place if you're going to treat people this way. So I come with my loud mouth comes that a bit too, a bit of social justice.
Well, hey man, I'm honoring you here. I mean, first of all, teaching moment on the show. I use the word integrity. I wrote it down on my paper here, that leaders, especially in the kitchen, because what I've learned is you lead a team and having humility and integrity, people will follow to the end of the earth. And I've been doing a side hustle recently, just helping out in a restaurant that a friend of mine asked me to check out. And, some of these chefs, they're in the hot conditions, they're working their tails off. And, a guy going in to lead them has to have that thread of humility. So way to go on that. I want to throw something. You'll notice that my brain goes in different directions when you talk. I'll go over here. That's three-dimensional thinking, I guess. It is. So I'm going to take you on a journey sometimes. And I remember, and there was a silent moment in my life, and I did a podcast on this. I think I titled it, We Remember Leaders Who Touch Our Souls. And Anthony Bourdain had passed away, sadly. And I literally felt, it was the same with Robin Williams. I felt like I lost something in my life. Even now I can still feel it. I could see the inflection in you. And here's the thing. I remember hiking the trail and doing the podcast, talking about how he touched my heart in so many ways. It was about his lifeline, which was a story of addiction and hard life and, being recognized for, who he really was, and then traveling the world. And I watched a show he did once about Paul Bocuse, and I don't know if I got that right, but there's something interesting I want to ask you about the whole evolution of chefs. It seems like in that show they talked about some real hard-ass teachers in the kitchen who taught chefs, and they were almost like a Ramsay kind of style, command and control, kick your butt. Tell me about that, just the whole leadership of why did cooking evolve that way? And how is it now with the millennials? You really have to teach and treat a lot different.
I think that there was a respect for the career that is not the same now for eons and for centuries, and it was a respected profession, something that you aspire to, and once you reach a particular level within a kitchen, that it was very well known that you had earned that through battles almost. And I think the brigade system really was designed for efficiency, and it really is an efficient system, so that things come out on time as they're meant to be. And there's not really a lot of room for error in that. So because the judgment on that comes from the customer. So, well, this didn't come out at the same time as this didn't come out at the same time as that, or that's been sitting up in the pass through and it's getting cold, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole regimental thing, there's definitely a use for that. The other thing is, I mean, there are different ways of getting people to that level, and there's a gentleman who used to be in the kitchen at Bridges on Granville Island. His name's Rayal, and just a wonderful, wonderful man. And I've never seen somebody command a kitchen in this way. He had he ran the kitchen in the downstairs bistro, which of course fed the pub, the bistro, and the patio, which is somewhere at around 300 to 400 seats. And
Yep.
it's Real and 6 wonderful, happy little Indian aunties working in there, and they are all singing Disney tunes. Nothing comes out late. Nobody fights. Nobody argues. Nobody complains. Nobody throws things. And it's the happiest place on earth, and it's the most efficient place I've ever seen in my life. So there's 2 sides to that. I mean, yes, he's still running a brigade, and yes, he's getting there, but there's no pans flying. There's no tempers roaring, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all in his approach, because he's really the lighthouse, not the tugboat.
Wow, I love that story, especially the happiest kitchen, or however you put that. What was the one thing he did to get those people feeling that way? Or if he had to be assertive, can you describe what he would do?
He's encouraging. It was always encouraging. Let me come and help you.
love
Let me show you. Let me show you so that you understand. Do you understand? Let me walk you through
Perfect.
this. Let me get my hands on this with you, right? And there's never. I don't think the man has a mean bone in his body. So assertive was never in his nature, ever. So and for me, I mean, that was over 20 years ago when I saw this, and
Yeah,
I still remember the man's name, and I remember exactly his energy.
Wow. Amazing. Everybody teaching moment there. So what you heard is a story 20 years ago. I'll not forget this one, Riel. But that's the thing. They say today there's good science on this, or research, Jason, that people leave companies for bad management or bad leaders, not for the company in a lot of cases. And in a case where, what you said, I think if we can inspire the leaders in a kitchen, I've always thought that maybe one of my next books would be a cookbook and teaching how to actually run a business the way you run a kitchen. It'd be a nice analogy for the business community. Let's get into the sort of the elephant under the table, which everybody's talking about now. That's COVID-19. Man, it just really hit the industry hard. You're a consultant. Just talk to me about that. If I'm a restaurant owner, anything you want to tell me.
I think, and I've been having this mindset, I guess, for the last several months about it, and I akin it to a great flood. That if your organization didn't have deep roots and a good foundation before, then you are in trouble. You are getting washed away, and we're seeing that happening in different regions and different areas, and so some worse than others. The other thing is, how prepared are you to change what you're doing? And because if you're going to hang on here, and if you're going to take advantage of the programs that are available, like wage subsidy and rent relief and all of these other things, then you really, in many cases, need somebody to help you walk you through them. So it's just a matter of asking for the help. And I think that's a big part of it. So operators, in many ways, get stuck in their own way, because they in many cases went into this having no idea how to run a restaurant or a business in the first place. They just had a good recipe for a lasagna, and then they get broadsided, right? So it's one thing to sell a lot of lasagna. It's another thing to be able to run a business and understand where your numbers are, what your numbers are at. And I always say, if you don't know your numbers well enough to be able to verse them every week, then you're screwed, because you have to be able to understand where can I pull this from, where can I move that to, and to have somebody to even help you do that. I mean, there's it's such a need, and there are operators who just have no clue.
Right.
So that's
yeah. Thank you. It is. I come from a financial background. That's part of my past career before I started being a thought leader, and it is true. I mean, a lot of the menu items in a restaurant. For example, I went into a restaurant last week, and there's 30 items on the menu, and there's stuff being sold at happy hour that's high price, and even watching some of the shows now on TV about this cooking show specials where they ask the chefs about their margins. They don't know. This is something that I guess will have to change for some of the restaurants. With the pivot going on, we talked about it before we went live about restaurants now doing pickup or delivery, and they're putting up obviously social distancing and things inside the restaurant. Jason, do you see when COVID sort of is behind us that shifting back, or is this a new way restaurants are going to be really operating?
I think two parts to that. One, COVID's never going to be behind us, because it's still always going to be floating around. It's always going to be the threat of that. So and what we need to do is really be smart about where we are and make a plan about where we're going. It's not about where we were, and we're never going back to where we were. So it's just not going to. If you think that you can still operate the way that you used to, you're going to be very sad on the side of the road looking at somebody locking your door. I think moving forward, building up things like you say, like delivery, and having a menu that functions in that way. I mean, because there's all kinds of stuff that doesn't travel, and it's one thing to say, well, okay, everybody should jump on delivery, but there are restaurants that just don't function as a delivery restaurant because their food doesn't travel well. So I think we have to look at things like menus. We have to look at things like ingredients, all of the stuff that we really need to decide. What are we going to carry? What's going to travel well, and are we going to pivot into that genre? And we also have to have a conversation about what's it going to cost me to go into that genre, because either you're going to hire your own drivers, you're going to go to a third-party delivery company, or something like that. So, and I'll add a little ray of sunshine to that afterwards. But there's in moving forward, I think a very smart thing to do is you got to know your numbers. You really have to know your suppliers, and you have to know that you're getting a good deal, or that you're on a rebate program, if that's at all possible, through your that is partnered with your suppliers. My clients are all introduced to Food by Canada, which is an amazing rebate program. If you're not on it, you're definitely losing out. To the point where for our organization, that's the first thing we do with new members is introduce them to Food Buy so they can start getting a rebate program, which happens monthly. So you get a check from them just for things that you buy. Cool. And all kinds of different things that we introduce people to. I mean, it's a little self-plugging, I guess, but like we work with Vito Oil Canada, and anybody who has a fryer in their operation, Vito guarantees that they will save you 30% oil cost. Right now, now's the time to be having a conversation with Jason Sawitsky about getting your oil down. I mean, that's not something that you think about always in food costs, but I mean, if you look at the end of the year, how much money you spend on fryer oil alone, it's a big number. And if you can save 30% of that guaranteed, up to 50% of that, that's huge. Wow. So it's just things like that running a restaurant is not, knowing how to do a few things well. It's knowing how to do a million little things and keeping them all in order. I always say about hospitality, it's three things, right? It's manufacturing at a kitchen level and an operational level. It's sales, which has been lost, and it's love. The reason why we get into this because of love. Then we learn that we have to know manufacturing, and we also have to instill sales into the front of our house. So it's not just, are you ready to order? You really have to be having this conversation about promoting sales and about teaching and training and making sure that you're selling your products. I don't know how many restaurants I've been to in the last month where I just literally want to pull my hair out and somebody comes up and says, "Are you ready to order?" I'm like, so you got nothing, right? Nothing at all? You're not even going to try and sell me anything. You're just going to let me pick it out and leave. Missed opportunity.
Wow. Unbelievable. I mean, you got me on a journey here again, man. My heart's growing on this one. I wrote down on my paper here, manufacturing, sales, love. We get the love thing. I mean, you have to be in the business and passionate or get out of it, I believe. But the sales one, I see it all the time. And some of the work I did when I was in the corporate sector as a business leader, one of the jobs I had was fun. I had to travel all over North America. I've been to some of the finest restaurants, steakhouses in the US as well. And we would do VIP events with, brokers and our clients, business clients. And we would go to some of these establishments, and there was great service, and then there was terrible service. I saw it all the time. You're looking at a menu, and your eyeballs are rolling, and the waiter's there, and they're not telling you. I remember a long time ago, this was way back. You probably obviously know who I'm talking about, Rob Feeney, who was one of my growing up legends.
Yeah.
And
This
I
fabulous
remember.
restaurant that he used to have, Lumiere on Broadway.
Absolutely, you nailed it. So I took
Yeah.
clients there for 2 3 hour meals, unbelievable, and that is exactly what I walked away from there feeling, that they would come out and they would set your soul on fire
Oh, yeah.
just by the language and the words about. And I remember watching a cooking show where the chefs would put all the staff in a room and say, I've made all my dishes for you here. Let's sit and be a family and eat. And when those people talked about those dishes, dude, it's like they're on fire about it. And so I tried that the other day when I was at this side hustle I was telling you about, helping a friend, and if somebody came in and I did that. I said, you know what? The other day I tried this off the menu. My wife and I just loved it. It set my soul on fire. I loved the taste and the flavor of the this that, and I said, oh, and they tried it, but far into, I don't know what it is. You tell me. Is it lack of training, or is it also the generational changes? And I'll just throw something out here. My wife is a banker, and she said that the banking industry, where I first started my career, Jason, if you don't know this, was more reactive, and then they moved to a sales culture. And there's a big resistance that we're pushing things on people, and today people think, well, it's too pushy. Uh, we're just give us an example of how do you, in training, how do you teach a server to sell? Give us a nugget if you were in their shoes and I was the customer.
So if somebody was coming to your home and you went out and you shopped for all the groceries and ingredients and you found the recipe and you cooked all day, and somebody was coming to have dinner with you, regardless of how many people are in the room, and you're talking about what you had prepared for them, are you just going to come out and drop the plate in front of them and say, can I get you anything else? Or are you going to talk about the story and the journey of, I went over to Granville Island Market and I picked up this and I got that, and I got this recipe from so and so, and it's got this wonderful flavor, and I cooked it for 11 hours, and this, people want to hear the story. Customers want to hear the story. They want to be a part of it. What we're involved in our industry is entertainment. Period. On every level. So, and in the entertainment industry, people want to be entertained. So with that whole, like you talk about, set your soul on fire and the flair of talking about a dish, if you're salespeople, and servers they have to be your salespeople. They have to be. They're the front face of your organization. No other industry in the world would send out people with no training and a notepad or no notepad and say, okay, well, go and be the face of my brand, please. No industry would do it. And the hardships that we have in our industry, and I've been saying this for a long, long time, long before COVID ever came along, the hardships in our industry are that people are completely shitting the bed on training their people. It's not the people, it's the managers and the operators' duty to make sure that they're hiring people who can tell the story about what they do. Because again, people are coming to sit down and be entertained. I mean, you've put your money into a good location, into your atmosphere and your ambiance and your ingredients and everything. And then you're going to send out Billy, who has no clue about anything about what you're doing. God love him, and he goes up and says, "Are you ready to order?"
Yeah,
that guy's the face of your brand. Really, you're okay with that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I just go back to some of the industries I've worked in, and they have online training. You get oriented, and you get given a week to watch a bunch of videos and learn product knowledge. And so, why is this a gap, or was it, or is it still a gap?
Lazy operators.
That's
what it comes down to, and I have no problem calling them out. So I did a video. My wife and I had gone to a restaurant. So I guess it's 2 years ago now. And I posted it, and I said, you know what? There's a reason why the industry is struggling. This is why. And I called people out. I specifically called people out. 60,000, no, it's 100. I think 120,000 people watched this video about me calling out the industry and saying it, because it touched a nerve in a big way, and people shared it like crazy about me saying, you know what? You're struggling, and you deserve to be, because you're being lazy about actually taking the time and making sure that your people have the tools and the knowledge and the education to do the job. You're just sending them out, Betty, follow, Barbie. Barbie never got training, and neither is now Betty going to get training. And they all going to show up and say, are you ready to order? You don't want any dessert, do you? Here's your bill. Have a nice day. Yeah, and the
Right.
operators go, oh, geez, they're such nice girls, and I'm sure they're very nice girls, but they're certainly not going out and presenting your brand or selling your dishes. So regardless of whether or not they're going and upselling, there's no story there, right? And how many times have you gone in and sat down in a restaurant and somebody comes over and says, okay, do you want anything other than water?
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Somebody made a wine list. Somebody trained somebody to do cocktails. Somebody has, ordered in juices. So there's a whole bunch of sparkling water in the fridge that's not moving. Why is that? Because nobody's talking about it. Ray Kroc would say, it was, of course, the founder
Yep.
from
Yep.
McDonald's. People will buy what you tell them to buy.
Absolutely. Now you got me going on a journey again. I mean, I always say the way you just described that, I am the customer sitting at the table and you come up and say, is there anything else I can get you? I want you to picture I've got a neon sign flashing on my forehead that says, I'm confused. And that's exactly, you nailed it. And that's exactly it. So you really opened the knife for me on this whole concept of the gap in the industry. Such a big opportunity. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, what that came to mind on your story, we're trading stories here, is a long, long time ago, I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and I did a development course. I got sent there by a board I was working for. And I'll tell you, I came away from that. And Jason, you know what I talked about? I didn't talk about the fact that they had a dining room and incredible food, that they had us stay on campus for 3 weeks, that the special skills coach of the Ottawa Senators hockey team took us for a run and taught us how to do a mini marathon over 3 weeks, that I met all these great people. I never talked about any of that. You know what I talked about? When I showed up at the reception desk to register, Kingston, Ontario, if you know it, is like a blustery place. So I got off a prop plane. Back then, I had more hair, and my hair was blowing everywhere. And I'm particular about the way I look. I get to the front, and I go, oh my gosh, my hair is all disheveled. I actually apologized to the girl. I said, sorry for how I look. I said, and I said, I lost my hairbrush. That night, when I went to bed, the first night, beside my bed, was a bottle of water and a wrapped Fuller hairbrush.
Cool.
That one little thing I never forgot about, and I learned this a long time ago. That's why you're such a great teacher. That it's how you make people feel, not what you say, and it's a little thing. So I'll add on one more to that, and I'll give it back to you on some other stuff. That I was doing this side hustle, as I said last week. This guy comes into this restaurant. It's actually a tap house in and out, like it has one of those Sicilian fired kitchen ovens, and lots of beer. And I'll ask you about alcohol in a minute as well, but this guy comes in, and I guess he says to me, it's my second day kind of around there, and he goes, why do you get that wine? He said, it tastes like, pardon my language, but it tastes like shit. And of course, I could have reacted and said, yeah, you're right, or go away. But I said, well, what would you like? And he said, well, that's too sweet. And it was a Pinot Grigio. And I said, well, I'm not a connoisseur, but I said, maybe a Pinot Gris or a Sauvignon Blanc. He said, Sauvignon Blanc would be nice. I said, I tell you what, there's only one kind of white wine here. So I went away and I talked to somebody who was in the management, and I went back to him and said, I tell you what, sir, I said, when you come in tomorrow, I want you to ask for so-and-so, and we're going to have for you a Sauvignon Blanc. And he just went like this. And Jason, from that moment, he was a grumpy, grouchy guy. From that moment, I was his best friend. And so I have a raving fan, and it was simply by doing something different. Now, whether every employee is empowered to do those things or not, come on, we can empower people and recreate that, right? So I totally get that. And I think that, everybody, you should contact Jason, and you should have a conversation if you run a restaurant, because, man, the stuff that you can teach us. So I'm going to give it back to you about anything you want to say about that, plus liquor. Let's talk about that. Is there a lot of margin in liquor? And then what do you think of these restaurants that have, they're like breweries with microbreweries with all these taps, plus a pretty good food? I see a lot of the millennials, especially in Port Moody where I live, some of these joints are just packed. Is there something special going on there?
Well, the Port Moody's got some amazing breweries, and right down by the park there. I mean, what a great place to go and spend a weekend afternoon, because the patios that they had set up last time I was there, of course, which was pre-COVID. But what an amazing group of breweries down there, and what they're doing is fantastic. And I love the idea of people going out and giving it a go. Kevin Brosh and I had this conversation about microbreweries on my show, The Thirsty Traveler, and his show's The Thirsty Traveler, and I said to him, so there's a lot of breweries out there, but a lot of them aren't good, and he goes, well, just like anything, there's they will weed themselves out by certainly by taste. And I remember watching Kevin Brosh's show when he was in Germany, and there's more small batch breweries in Germany than probably anywhere, but there's thousands and thousands of them, and they all do well. So yeah. I think for organizations doing small batch brew, it's great to have the food to go with it, and for people who are educating themselves in this in this trade now, it's great. People are jumping on board. I have my ones that I like and different ones that I don't. But as far as alcohol goes, there's certainly margin in alcohol, and we can have this conversation currently about what's going on in British Columbia too, where they've cut the alcohol sales off at 10 o'clock.
That's right.
Which I've publicly said is pretty much martial law in the industry. So you literally have to have everybody out of your restaurant by 11. Yep. So that's there's a lot to be said about that, and it's a big problem, way bigger than the so-called leaders of the industry want to let on.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. I'm not a big connoisseur of beer, but certainly going in and getting a flight of local beers, what I really think is missing is the people serving them don't know a lot about the beer. So as you said, it's probably some just basic training, bringing the brewery in.
Why? Yeah. Like, how can you possibly have somebody bring this out? If you're going to get 6 different types of beers, this person should be able to tell you, the name of the guy's grandchildren who brewed it, right? It literally needs to be an education. And when we talk about, evolution or de-evolution in our industry of professionalism, et cetera, it's because management and operators are not making sure that that's happening, right? Yeah. It's show business. And how can you possibly send somebody on stage who doesn't have any lines? Who doesn't know their lines?
Absolutely. I love that. And I want to ask you about another line here in connection with the whole concept of food. And I read somewhere that the food and beverage processing industry had a 10.5 billion record year of sales. And I noticed in my local Costco warehouse here, I have some connection to that they were expecting during the summer, and with COVID and all, things slow down. Things are like straight line. My own philosophy was, well, if the restaurants were closed for a while, people weren't going to spend that money. They were buying more food to feed the families and stay home. This whole thing about food sales going up, and then the future of restaurants. There's these meal kits now you can order online and bring to your home. I know this is a hard question, but if you were in a room and doing strategy work, and they say, when the world changes, there's a paradigm shift. What we did in the past doesn't matter anymore. Just, talk openly about what you see as a vision, maybe in the next 10 years of the food industry, particularly the retail or the food establishments.
I think that's a big question with a lot of different sectors in it. So it depends on what type of operation, and not everybody's going to go to the same thing. And like I say, not every operation is designed for travel. So not every menu is designed to travel well. And I think if you are designing your future for a restaurant, putting delivery in there is smart. A lot of people aren't going to go back real soon, and eventually people will go back, but there's a lot of things to plan. And it's not just about off premise. So, and I've had this conversation a lot recently, and in Calgary, where I am right now, the operators are going through and they're putting in stanchions, dividers between the tables. So, for example, a place that my wife and I go to that we love is called Hayden Block, and they have put up these very nice looking wooden dividers between the tables. So you have a 4-top, and then you've got a wooden divider, and then you've got another 4-top. So what that does is it actually reduces the need to have tables 2 meters apart. So, right? So then you can still fill the place, and not everybody's touching each other, right? And then another place that we went to, which is right near our office, called Blanco, and I say these people's names because I'm so proud of them for innovating, right? We sat in a booth. We took my daughter out for lunch, and we sat in a booth, and they had a plexi between our booth and the next person's booth. So, for example, if you're leaning back, your hair's not touching the other person's hair, right? You're not that close, but it's there. So, and the place was busy, and the patio was busy, and they're not running around going, "Oh, woe is me! What are we going to do when patio season hits?" They've already found a solution.
Awesome. Are you based in Alberta? Is that where you are now?
I'm in Calgary right now. Yeah.
All right. And you were in Ontario, you said a while back. That's when you were
been in Ontario, been in Saskatoon, been in Edmonton, been in Calgary, been in Vancouver.
All right, there you go. Everybody, if you're listening, because we are an international show, Jason, the Vancouver has some of the greatest restaurants in the world. I mean, we've been put on the map. It's the landscape's changing. It's a privilege to have Jason on. Jason, I have one more area I want to explore with you. You've been tremendous. I could learn so much from you for hours. By the way, have you heard of the Pear Tree restaurant, Vancouver? There's a little joint on Hastings Street. It just closed and broke my heart.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it was a hole in the wall. My wife and I started going to it years ago, and it was incredible. It was one of these, almost like a Rob Feeney type concept, with small plates and things, fine list of wines, and they only had, I think, 15 tables. But it was run like a high-end. The experience was amazing. We loved it. We'd spend a couple $100 easy. And I go by the other day, and I turn and look, and there's a sign saying closed and for lease. Just tough. So that's a quick question on that is, just like the Great Recession, when everything stopped construction, there's going to be an evolution. They're saying that there's going to be huge opportunities when things get back to somewhat normal, where new restaurants are going to open, where people have been like you in the trenches reinventing experiences, and all of a sudden things are going to. Do you see that this is going to create maybe innovation and just some greater restaurants?
Definitely. It's definitely creating innovation. I'm working with a client in Toronto right now, and we are designing his restaurant, which is a small footprint vegetarian burger place. And it's operationally very, very, very efficient, like a clock. And it's only 600 square feet. It doesn't need a lot of space. And a lot to that is just being smart about the type of equipment, about your relationship with your supplier. So we're getting them connected with a supplier who can deliver 7 days a week, so he doesn't have to have a huge walk-in in there, which of course increases his monthly lease, et cetera, and having efficient equipment and having efficiencies in the menu itself, so that things can be made very quickly and put out very quickly. And that's all innovation. So that's all about learning and taking these things that I've learned over the last over 30 years and popping them into saying, hey, you know what, this is you want to have something that's efficient and not something where you're stuck with this albatross of a massive rent around your neck. You still want to have a restaurant, then this is a great efficient way to do it. So there's all kinds of different things. And again, like I say, it's about knowing a million little things about restaurants, not just having a really great one dish.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a show that I watch, Robert Irvine's Restaurant Impossible.
Yeah,
quite love that show.
That's a superhero.
Especially the guy's guns. I mean, the guy's built like.
Oh my God, they're like the size of my head.
Yeah, but he is like, first of all, why I love him, I should tell you that soul connector, like Bourdain and like your story, is he had an interesting upbringing himself, and he turned that, and he finds stories inside people. On his show, he goes deep and he finds broken people, and their restaurants are failing, and there's all this stuff. I just love that. But man, he so talks like you. I've learned in that show, he goes right to the costs, and what's it cost per dish, and what's it cost. So I think that's pretty cool.
When I say manufacturing, that's what I mean, right? I mean, you would never, if it's whether you're building boxes or cars or whatever it is, exactly how much your materials cost you, exactly how many nails and screws go into it, and all of that. But in our industry, we don't necessarily do that. So if you were going to go into any other business, and again, I always say we have a hard time in running restaurants because we're not learning it as a functioning business. It's always about, it's not always, but it's often about, a dish or somebody who has a passion to go into it. But first, somebody needs to sit down with people and go, okay, now let's take a look at how this manufacturing business operates. Because if you're going to put the same dish day after day after day, then you've got to know what that
Yeah.
thing costs you, and what is it, and not just what it costs you for ingredients, but what does it cost you in equipment, what does it cost you in people, what does it cost you in labor hours, what does it cost you in your rent, just to be able to do this thing. So it's not about how great your lasagna is, Susan. It's about how you actually get there.
Right. I've got to say, because you took me on a journey somewhere else, that in part of my career, I was a loan officer and in the banking industry earlier on. I was quite young. And, to be fair to some of these people who start restaurants, like you said, which was brilliant, they started off the side of their coffee table in their kitchen and create something. And then they have this idea of starting a restaurant. It's one table turns into 10 and it explodes. They're not unlike anybody else. When I was the loan officer, people would come in, Jason, and I would have to sit down. There was no computer back then and handwrite an application. But it was the bank that gave me the analytical systems and tools to figure out their gross debt service ratio and their total debt service ratio. And it baffles my mind. Maybe it's an opportunity to create something and make some money off it, or maybe it's there. But there's enough technology to be able to create something, an analytical tool where a restaurant owner just plugs in it's all there, and they just plug it in and say, here's your margins. You just click, manipulate the numbers, and then maybe it's already there. Go to business owner school for restaurants. I know there's lots of education, but you're really opening my eye. Is the food truck industry dead because of COVID, or is it still?
Oh gosh, no, I don't think so at all. I think
Okay.
I think the food truck industry in COVID, I would expect to be thriving. Because again, it's like delivery. Your customers aren't worried about coming and sitting down in an environment where they might get something from somebody else. So it's as long as your staff are healthy. I mean, I would certainly expect that people are coming to try those different things. And the thing I love about food trucks is their adventure. I mean, the operators are so adventurous. I mean, nobody goes out and makes a ham sandwich in a food truck. I mean, it's it's always something adventurous or something different so that they can stand out from the next guy. And I just love that about the food truck industry.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for that. The movie industry up here is, big too. And as it gets going, those things are on every street corner. And I think I just thought of what you said. And they say outdoors is better for COVID because if you're outdoors, so, going up to a food truck and grabbing a meal, that's a good idea. I'll spend the last 5 minutes with you on the home kitchen. This is my area of passion, and I'm going to just throw out a dream of mine. I bought all the gear. I want to start my own YouTube videos for cooking and write a cookbook at some point. Maybe even use stories that relate to business, capture that audience. But give some advice for if you're a guy or gal who wants to start cooking in your home kitchen. What do you do to deck it out and learn a little bit so you can do something creative for yourself?
I think at home, I mean, you decide what you like, and I think the smartest thing to do for people before they get too adventurous is to learn basics. So even to look at what did your mom make and how did she make it, and can you make it that way, and what did your grandma make, and how did she make it, and because you have a very distinct knowledge of exactly the way that thing tastes, and if you can get there. Right. If you can reverse engineer that back and if you're lucky enough to still have those people around to teach you, then that's a really great way to learn techniques and things that you're not going to learn in the school. Right. I mean, this is the reason why I do this, and this is the reason why I wait this long, and this is the reason why it goes in the fridge for this amount of time. All of those different things. I mean, that's knowledge that we as culinarians have gathered and put into our basket, right? And hopefully we eventually pass that basket down to the next generation. But I think that learning to cook at home in that way, because you have that reference point, is really the best way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you something fun I do is there's a culinary store down in Vancouver here. I can't remember the name. Karen McSherry, I think, owned it or started it. And there's a culinary school beside it. So I started going there and just wandering around like a kid in a candy store. And when I go to restaurants back in the days, I would ask to tour the kitchen or at least look at it if it was an open kitchen. I'd go and wander, and so I started decking out my kitchen and just finding the top 3 or 4 prep bowls and stuff like that, watching some shows. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn in the home kitchen for people right now who are stuck in COVID. So thanks for sharing that with us.
I think that's the Chef's Warehouse on Hastings you're talking about.
Man, that's it. And I could be there. It's my happy
I love
place.
that place. I love it. I actually wanted to sign up to a cheese making seminar they had last time I was in Vancouver.
Yep.
And again, it's like going into a candy store, just going in and going, oh, more toys.
That's right. Yeah, all my guy friends for my birthday say, "What do you want?" It's a certificate to the culinary warehouse, and they look at me funny, like, "Okay, go away." All right. Yeah, it's the other thing too about men. I mean, you look in kitchens, a lot of chefs have been men, and I did learn. I won't talk about it openly here, but through Bocuse's show and all that stuff, just about the evolution of women in the kitchen. And I think there's an opportunity for more of that, just like in business. They're finding out women can be better leaders and better teachers.
I have an opinion on that, which I absolutely love having women in the kitchen. I find that they're hardworking, they're meticulous, they thrive in an environment where they really want to shine and be heard. And I think it's awesome that's happening. I really think it's awesome.
Well, everybody, there, another teaching moment. You've been endorsed by Jason J. McBride, the gender balance in the kitchen. And the reality is that you go to most countries and the people at home who have to look after the kids who are cooking are the women. And some of the dishes are incredible. So let's move to wrapping up here, because you've given us so much of your time. I could talk to you forever here, Jason. As I get to the end of the show, I always honor the guest with what I call leadership words. These are unscripted. As you're talking, I write them down on my paper. And so I have some words I want to share with you that I'll attach to the show. So integrity, number one, that story you told us up front about your integrity of turning down an opportunity. You call it social justice. Love it. Passion comes out of you. There's no question. Passion about what you do, about food. I'm going to use the word maven if you read the book Outliers. If you didn't, maven is somebody they say, if you want to know something about a certain topic, go to talk to that guy. And you're a maven in the industry of obviously food. Everybody, if you don't know, the Jason has 40,000 followers, but these are from within industry. He's an expert, so you might want to connect and get to know him. And the last one is love, Jason. There's just something about you. The fact that you went through that early story with your upbringing, which wasn't easy, and then you've gone in the world and you've adopted, I call it your hero's journey, the passion of cooking to teach others. You're sharing love. You're sharing something that makes people happy, because I know when most people eat, they have a smile on their face. So thank you for blessing us with that. The last thing I want to do is induct you into the Quiet Warrior tribe, or we'll call it the Hall of Fame. I don't know if I told you you'd be getting an award today. Okay, well, here we go. So if you see, those who can't see this, watch the replay or you'll hear me. Jason, on the back behind me is a screensaver. You could see that, right? A little bit.
Yes.
Who's that guy? Looks like Tom Dutta. And you bet. A little more hair. When I started this show, I wanted to have it explode. It's now in 11 countries, and I wanted to be a community, because the power of community, nobody succeeds without it, as Napoleon Hill taught us. And I decided to get this coin made, and it's called the Challenge Coin. The Challenge Coin started in World War I era. They were carried by soldiers in a unit to commit to each other. If you and I showed up and you didn't have yours, maybe you'd buy drinks or dinner and we'd have fun. But today, Jason, they're around the world, the FBI, first responders, Alcoholics Anonymous, who my dad was for 22 years. These coins are everywhere. So the front of the coin that you see on the screensaver is the actual image of the show. And the back of it is actually the hero's journey narrative crest, which is actually what my show is built on, where we take a journey and we come back as a guide or a teacher. And so it'll come in a cherry box, and I hope to give it to you in person. But you're now joining the tribe. There's less than 50 of these a year that go out in a world of 8 billion people. And it's only for people who are authentic, who are actually doing something purposeful to change the world through their own soul. So welcome to the Quiet Warriors.
I'm absolutely honored, and I knew about the challenge coin from following you, and thank you so much, Tom, for having me, and I certainly appreciate it. It's humbling, and thank you.
You're welcome. And so everybody, find this show on your favorite podcast channel. Give it a high rating so that we can honor Jason's work and share his story. Remember that we're going to be releasing it in a podcast and also as a YouTube video premiere. Stand by in the near future for that. And connect to Jason. Jason, last word from you. Where can people get a hold of you?
Realhospitality.live is our show. That's our webpage for our show. Realhospitality.network is our organization, which again is helps to support operators in over 8 countries. And there's a lot of stuff going on over the next several weeks that you're going to see come out of there. And it's all directed at making sure that operators are better prepared and are in a great location to be able to do that. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn under Chef Jason J. McBride.
All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. Get a hold of Jason and make sure you even have a conversation. It'll change your life in this area. Live life with that passion, everyone. Like you hear from Jason, take action and live the life that you deserve and desire. Jason, thanks for having the show, and come back again in the future, will you?
Oh, I would absolutely love to. And again, thank you, Tom, for inviting me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you. Stand by.